o'clock at night, folks. What time of the day is it? I thought we were on the I Love Ann show, but no, it's Jim Bohannon. How you doing this morning, Jim?
I'm doing fine, Ann. How are you?
I'm great. Gosh, I tell you what, I just saw the top 100 heavy hitters talkers list, and you were number 20.
Yes, number 20 with a bullet, exactly. I was very pleased to see that.
Yeah, congratulations. And I tell you what, of course, last year you won the Lifetime Achievement Award, so your world is doing pretty darn good, isn't it, Jim?
Well, life has been good to me. I have to tell you that, Ann. It sure has. I've been very, very fortunate, and I thank you for putting me on.
Well, absolutely. We have you on, 10 to 1, and then you come on and give us the news from 6 to 7. I guess you must work all night.
Well, as a matter of fact, I have. That's right. Yeah, this is the end of my day.
It's the end of your day, and my day's just beginning. So, Jim, yesterday, it just seems like we can't get out of the bad news coming down the pike, can we?
Yeah, it certainly does seem like a lot of bad news, and obviously another shooting at Fort Hood, Texas, a terrible, terrible tragedy. We don't know yet any motive for it, but certainly a very, very sad day.
Certainly. And, I know last night you spent a lot of time talking about all of that. What conclusion did you get out of the people that you talked to?
Oh, I think that probably that the military is going to have to seriously consider allowing military personnel to carry sidearms on base, on post in the United States, out of combat zones. They don't do that currently, and I think they may need to do that.
Well, what do you think about just having people that with all armed? I mean, are you thinking just in special locations, or just everybody would be able to carry a firearm?
I'm thinking along the lines, given the fact that if you're in the Army at all, you've had rifle training, I would certainly offer military personnel the option of learning how to fire a small sidearm, a 9mm, 45 caliber, something of that nature. I would let them practice on the range, and I would give them that option, which currently they don't have. But I wouldn't make it mandatory in any way. No.
Sure. Okay. Well, that would be that. I guess would be one answer. Is just it sometimes seems kind of worrisome. Why does the military not allow people to carry on base?
The general view has always been that it's pretty much like an American office environment, that as in the general course of events, most people don't go to the office packing heat, although, of course, more and more Americans do, in fact, get concealed carry permits, and they do carry weapons with them, and the military never felt that need outside of a combat zone. There was never any need really felt to do that.
Yeah. Well, it certainly is troublesome times, and of course then we've got Malaysia, and we've got the earthquake in Chile, and then we've got Romania, Crimea. I mean, the worldwide news just seems to be horrible out there, Jim.
Oh, it does seem like it, Ann, but I mean, the world has always had problems, and it could certainly be a lot worse. The economic recovery is certainly incomplete, but we seem to be doing better than we were. The United States is still the number one power in the world, although we've done a lot of things to cut back our power and our influence. So I guess the only thing I could add would be that it could be worse.
Well, how positive can that be?
Well, I know it's a troubling world. There's no question about that. But I take a lot of comfort in the fact that it could be worse. I really do. I know it's a negative way to look at it, but I do take comfort in that fact.
Well, that's good, Jim. Now, one of the things I wanted to ask you, Mike Rogers stepping down, and what do you think about that, and the fact that he wants to become a national radio show host?
Well, that's apparently what he's going to do. He's going to be working for Cumulus, which owns Westwood One, so he's going to be my corporate partner, as it were. Of course, Cumulus had been running Mike Huckabee opposite Rush Limbaugh in the noon to 3 time slot.
Right.
And since Mike Huckabee has given up that position, the thought is he may be put into that time slot. If so, that's pretty serious competition. I don't quite understand why a man would give up the position of influence that Mike Rogers has to be a poor second place to Rush Limbaugh in the ratings. I just find it kind of interesting. I'd love to ask him why he's doing this.
I know, and I actually had a little clip. I actually talked to Congressman Trey Gowdy about this because, of course, he is in all the influence areas there, and I thought you might like to hear what Trey Gowdy had to say about that. So I got this clip I want to play for you.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, here you go. What about Mike Rogers stepping down? What do you think about that?
I called him this morning. I was surprised.
He wants to be a radio host, though, a national radio host.
Let me tell you right now, there's no room for him in South Carolina. That market's closed off.
It is?
Yes, by you.
Okay.
Trey is a charmer, no question about that.
Yeah, he is. And, we saw him last Friday up at Wofford, so I thought that was an interesting answer.
You've got to tell him to come on my show. I've tried several times, and I can't get him to come on my show.
Well, I'll see what influence I can have over him.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, other things going on in the news, and I was trying to find some good topic for us to talk about here this morning. And so last night I was looking over some of the bills that were out there, and one of the ones here in South Carolina, Senator Tom Davis here, he's from Beaufort, has put a bill that would alter more than a 212-year-old anti-gaming law in South Carolina to allow friendly card and dice games. And it went on the Senate floor yesterday. Down there in Hilton Head at one of the retirement communities down there, the law enforcement division said they couldn't have their mahjong and bridge games.
Why? Is it some kind of anti-gambling thing?
Yes, they didn't want them making any wagers.
I'm afraid I can't get too upset about gambling somehow. I'm sure that's a major problem for some people. I'll tell you something. I would be very happy if I thought that gambling was the number one problem facing this country.
Yeah. Well, and then it's very interesting because when we look at gambling, we have the lotteries, and all these states have the lotteries. It seems like states want to actually be in the gambling business, don't they?
Oh, well, states love to be in the gambling business. Let's face it, there are two ways that people voluntarily pay taxes. One, vanity license plates, and the other is state lotteries. Those are the only two ways that people line up to pay taxes. So sure, states love those.
And they want to control this, so I guess they don't want anybody else to have a good time.
That could possibly be part of it. There's no question about the fact that a lot of states do depend on gambling revenues. South Carolina not as much, but it's certainly a state like Nevada or New Jersey with Atlantic City depends very heavily on such revenue. So that's possible. But I mean, I don't see that. I mean, unless you've got a moral objection to it, in which case then the state shouldn't be in the gambling business in the first place. I think that's unnecessary meddling to say you can gamble, but only with the state.
Well, exactly. But one of the things that they have said here that any loosening of gambling restrictions is usually viewed with suspicion in South Carolina, long after a state senator quietly removed seemingly innocuous language from the 1986 budget that ended up legalizing video poker for a decade. Video poker.
I could never get into that.
Neither can I. But the very fact that was very lucrative for the state, and yet they did away with it here.
Well, again, as I say, it's proven very valuable to a lot of states. I mean, a lot of places have casino gambling and the like. There are some places, I know in some states, you can only have gambling on riverboats.
Right.
And so the riverboats have to be tied up like a foot away from the land.
Sure.
They have to be literally in the water. and you can have a little bridge to walk over it. But in some states, the law is so carefully worded that you can't have a slot machine that's on solid ground, but you can do anything you want to on the water.
Yeah, they just the Indian reservation here just lost a case on that because it is allowed for some type of gambling. I don't remember exactly the particulars, but they said that they are allowed, if there's any type of gambling, they can have it on their property. But the caveat was it was in the river. So they couldn't have it on the land. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So some of the interesting stuff. Also, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about political correctness.
It's one of my least favorite subjects. I hate the way people just insist on being politically correct. It really bothers me.
Well, what would you say if one child, a little girl, and this actually happened right here in our town, one little girl called a little boy a booger, and the child was sent home, and they wanted the mother to come in for counseling on why that is unacceptable for a child to call another child a booger?
It may not be terribly cool to use the term, but I must confess, unless there's a group of which I'm unaware of, if there's a booger anti-defamation league, I was unaware of it. I don't know. I know a lot of ethnic slurs, for example. I don't use them, but I know them. And
Sure.
This one's new to me. If there is a group that is offended by that, I cannot imagine who it would be.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We're going so far over the edge. I mean, do you ever find yourself trying to click through what would be appropriate to say when you're thinking of something?
You know, honestly, I have on many an occasion gone out of my way to offend somebody. No, seriously, just because a lot of people are too easily offended. A lot of people need to get over themselves in this country.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, daily there is something where somebody was offended because this was said. I mean, there are words that are never going to be used again because they are offensive.
Oh, absolutely. I know. I again would go out of my way to use useful words. Now, again, to call someone a booger, I don't quite get it. I think I'm not certainly offended by it, but I'm kind of confused by it.
I just thought that was a great case. We cannot even let our kids.
Yeah. Well, how about this? The kid, and I forget where this was, but the kid was sent. He was sent home from school because he pointed his finger like a gun at another student.
Yes.
His finger like the barrel of a gun, and this violated their zero tolerance on firearms, for Pete's sake. Like the kid had a .45 caliber forefinger or something.
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. What has happened to our sense of even play?
Well, in situations like that, what's happened to the local school boards? I mean, why is a school board like that even tolerated? If a school board does that, why do the citizens not vote the bums out at the next election? I mean, at least school boards are under local control.
Yes. It does seem that way, and is it because nobody else wants to take up the role?
I don't know. Unfortunately, politicians are in the business of not offending, which is not right. Politicians should be in the business of doing what needs to be done, and frequently that means that of necessity you will offend. But politicians, especially those who think of themselves as career politicians, are in the business of not offending. And that's a large part of our problem, not offending.
Well, except with a rating of, 7, 8, 10%, whatever it is right now, they certainly do offend, don't they?
Who is that?
I said with their rating in Congress, 7%, 10%, whatever it is right now.
Oh, yeah. Well, the funny thing about that, we like our own member of Congress just fine, as is evidenced by the fact that even in a big turnover year like 1994 or 2012, probably 2010, you still see 90% of the members of Congress reelected, maybe even higher than 90%. It's the people elected by other folks that we don't like. But, of course, the people elected by other folks are none of our business. I mean, we need to again, focus on the things that are our business. And if somebody else elects somebody to Congress I don't like, well, that's none of my business. If I move to that district, then it becomes my business. Until I do, it's not.
Well, you make a good point on that, Jim. What do you think with 2014, with the elections coming up? What do you think is going to happen with the Senate? Any idea?
Oh, I think that unless something changes, given the dissatisfaction with Obamacare, given the extremely slow pace of recovery, and I would hope a host of other issues as well, I think that it's very likely that the Republicans will take control of the Senate and keep control of the House. Yes, I do.
So you think that's going to happen?
Yeah, I do. A lot can happen between now and November, but if the election were held today, yes, I think that's what would happen.
Okay, and so then what happens as far as anything happening in government?
Well, of course, the president's programs would be even more blocked. Again, if you want to look at the problem, look at the people out there. People who are upset about this, look in the mirror. Did you vote for a Republican for the House and a Democrat for the Senate and a Democrat for the President? A lot of you had to have, or we wouldn't have what we have now. You voted the straight paralysis ticket, and I'll bet you those are the same people who were whining about gridlock. Well, you created gridlock. Make up your minds. That's something I would tell the American public. You think maybe between now and November you could possibly, I don't know, read a newspaper, read the op-ed page, form some opinions, vote consistently, and not just because you've heard somebody's name? I mean, we are in the problem we're in because a lot of the American public is dumb as a post.
Ooh, that's pretty harsh here this morning.
Well, it's very harsh, and I meant it to be harsh. How can you possibly vote for most Democrats for the Senate and most Republicans for the House? In this day and age, the parties are very ideological, and there are very few Democrats in the Senate and Republicans in the House who agree on the issues. That means an awful lot of people were voting on name recognition, or somebody is handsome, or somebody reminds me of my deadbeat brother-in-law. And I will go back to what I just said. A lot of the public is as dumb as a post. Well, if people would vote consistently, I don't mind somebody who votes against me if they've got at least a consistent opinion, if they've studied the issues and they've just reached different conclusions than I do. But these lame brains out there who just don't know what's going on, who can tell you who came in second on Dancing with the Stars, but couldn't even name their own member of Congress, those people drive me crazy.
Well, then, you must be nuts. Because there's a lot of people out there that don't pay attention and don't have any idea.
I know, and there's a name for those people. We call them bad citizens.
Yeah, okay. I thought you were going to use some politically incorrect terminology.
Oh, I don't know. These days, of course, citizen is probably an incorrect term. There are parts of the country where they want to let non-citizens vote.
Well, haven't they actually passed that someplace in California or something?
California is the hotbed of where they're trying to do it. I think they have in some localities. No state has done that yet, but yeah, in some localities you can be a non-citizen and vote.
That's a pretty frightening thing. What do you think about? I know that immigration is a topic that you talk about a lot on your show. What do you think? Immigration, is it going to go anywhere this year or not?
Oh, nothing's going to go anywhere this year. No, both parties would much rather have an issue to take to the November election than they would a solution. No, we're not going to get anything. This will be one of the least productive sessions of Congress ever because the politicians are building ammunition for November. And as I say, with any luck, maybe the public will make up their minds in November and vote consistently. And then, whichever way, even if the public voted consistently in opposition to me, at least they would have made up their minds. They would have formed an opinion. So, I mean, that would be a step in the right direction.
What do you think about President Obama? If he is blocked, if the Senate is taken over by Republicans, will he use his pen and his phone that much more?
Oh, he'll try to. I mean, already this man, he's not the only offender in executive orders. A lot of presidents have used executive orders way beyond what they should ever be allowed to do. But he's taken it further than anybody else. The Constitution, which, believe it or not, is still the rule book for the country, says a president may sign a bill or a president may veto a bill. A president may not amend a bill. This president has, by executive order, changed Obamacare, I believe it is 36 times. And we just sit back and let him do that. Now, fortunately, there is a lawsuit underway currently by a man in Florida who had the employer mandate that he was facing, and then it was changed by the president unconstitutionally by executive order, and he has got a lawsuit that it ought to make it to the Supreme Court, which should, if the Supreme Court's going to earn their pay, decide once and for all what the boundaries of executive orders are.
Sure. And, of course, actually, Trey Gowdy and a group down here did put a act up that was to stop the president. And then, of course, that didn't go through. Well, it passed in the House, but it didn't make it to the Senate. And then, of course, Tom Rice down here put up the STOP Act, and they haven't taken that one up yet. But there are things out there that are percolating to see if they can stop the president.
Well, certainly there's a lot of disagreement between the president and Capitol Hill. I mean, people who are upset with Congress should keep in mind we're a very divided country. Congress is representing us perfectly. Congress is a deeply divided Congress. If Congress was in unanimous agreement with a deeply divided country, Congress would not be doing its job. We are a country with serious issues.
Sure. I mean, well, we are. And we've got problems that aren't really being solved. They're just being hammered, aren't they?
Well, that's one thing about the parliamentary system. There, the winners win, which means that they get to try their solution. Now, if they mess it up, then they get thrown out of the next election, and the other guys get to try. But one thing about the parliamentary system of government, like Britain has and most Western countries have, is that you don't have gridlock.
Right.
There's a lot to be said for that.
There sure is. Now, looking as, well, you're an outsider, but you're an insider because you do have a place down here in South Carolina, but you also, of course, are up there in Washington, D.C., et cetera.
I work inside the Beltway, but I live outside the Beltway.
Right. But my point I wanted to ask you about, Senator Lindsey Graham, what do you think about this race? I mean, we've got 5 or 6 people vying against him. What do you see?
Well, I think that that there could be 3 possible races there, and 2 of them I think are pretty obvious. Race number 1 is the Republican primary, and
yes.
Lindsey Graham will win that. He's got a huge war chest and a lot of name recognition. The second race is the general election, and the Republican nominee in South Carolina is going to win that. The key race is if those 6 opponents of Lindsey Graham deny him nomination and force a runoff, then frankly, the anti-Lindsey Graham vote may very well beat Lindsey in a runoff. The key is not the June 24th primary, but if there is a runoff election. If Lindsey Graham wins more than 50% June 24th, he's in.
Right. So that's the one to watch on that. And then, of course, I don't know if you saw this. I'm sure you probably did. But Governor Nikki Haley has a challenger in the radio station owner, Irwin. Did you see that?
No, I did not see that.
Yes, I don't have his first name, but he owns 3 stations over there in Anderson, and he is challenging Governor Nikki Haley, so there'll be a primary runoff right here in South Carolina for the governor.
Well, I suppose that Governor Haley's had a few problems, but I don't think that she's in nearly the trouble that Lindsey Graham could be in. I would be very surprised if Nikki Haley doesn't win renomination and re-election.
I would be too, but I just thought it was interesting. He filed right at the last minute and popped up on the radar.
Well, that is interesting. Yeah, as I say, I can't see anything coming of that. But hey, everybody needs a hobby, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so. Well, Jim Bohannon, it is always a pleasure to have you on my show. Thanks so much for calling us this morning.
Well, thank you so much, Ann Eller, and it's an honor to be a part of 1450 WCRS.
Well, thank you so much. Hey, you have a great day. Get some rest, and we'll be listening to you right here on WCRS.
Thank you, ma'am.
All righty. Bye-bye, Jim.
Bye-bye.